in the ECF Choices arena, also with the Katie Beckett crowd. My own child will someday be in the ECF Choices program, I hope. She's been on the waiting list for 3.5 years. We're hopeful that this new round of funding may garner her a slot. I run a few family support groups on Facebook for folks who use the program. And it's really a good way to sort of get a good rounded look at how families really are able to access the services and what impact it has on their lives. So let's get started. With an overview. Go ahead. So this waiver program started in 2016, and it was really the first time that individuals with developmental disabilities had access to long-term supports and services in Tennessee. It was launched at a time when the Department of Intellectual and Developmental Disability waivers first closed to new enrollment. So these services are usually referred to as HCBS, and that stands for Home and Community-Based Services. And the purpose is to support that real integrated life and getting competitive employment and independent community living as the first option for people, as opposed to group homes and sheltered living. Non-financial requirements are that an individual has an intellectual disability that began before 18 or a developmental disability that began before the age of 22. And then, of course, there are the financial requirements. They can be enrolled in TennCare Medicaid as an SSI recipient, or they could meet standards through one of the other groups. There is one that's called 217 light group, which means that they qualify because they need to avoid an institutional setting. And then there's another one that's similar, and it's called an at-risk group, which means that they're at risk for an institutional setting. Next slide. So why should a person be in ECF Choices? We're going to talk about the basic structure. All that we just reviewed was rather policy heavy, and this will be a little more about how it actually works. So as I just mentioned, there's 3 basic eligibility paths. If you're SSI eligible or financially eligible, if you're eligible because you need to avoid institutionalization, or if you're eligible because you're at risk for institutionalization. Next slide. The way that enrollment in ECF Choices works is based on these priority categories. This is called the pink page, and it shows a sort of hierarchy of different scenarios in which a person might be enrolled in the program. There's very limited slots right now. There's an extensive waiting list. But occasionally slots do open up, whether a person has left the program or there have been limited statutorily funded spots every year that have been available. So there have been a few openings. So these are the ways that somebody might get into those. And they're basically around employment and their caregivers. Do they have natural supports, and are they able and interested to work? Next slide. This is called the green page, and it's for when there are additional slots available, who else can be enrolled? So these are the further scenarios, and these are also mostly based on caregivers and how interested a person is in employment, but there are some additional scenarios. This is also very detailed and difficult to sort of parse through. Typically, if you have a very skilled support coordinator, they can help you figure out which one applies to your person, and then you can sort of figure out whether you are waiting for a window to open or whether you have one already that you can slide into. Next slide. So when there are slots available and you're going to be put into one, there are different groups available. And they all have different eligibility criteria and different available services. Each also have their own cap of available slots and benefit caps. Next slide. The first group is group 4. It's called Essential Family Supports. And it's for anyone under the age of 21. So basically all children. Many of the people who were previously in this group were moved to, of the children who were in this group, were moved to Katie Beckett when that opened. But there still are some children in this group. So they all have IDD and they all live at home with their family. And they have a more limited benefit options than the other groups. Next slide. Group 5 are for people 21 and older who don't qualify for a level of care in an institution or nursing home. Some people qualify if they don't live at home with family anymore. And this is a greater benefit package. Some people use this to for benefits towards living in the community. Sometimes people are in this group because they qualified for the next group, group 6, but it's full. However, their needs are still able to be safely met in this group. So sometimes they kind of wait in this area until there's a higher benefit available for them. This is sort of the median level. You need more helps and supports to be safe in the community and independent living, but you're not the highest level of care either. Next slide. Group 6 is called Comprehensive Supports for Employment and Community Living. It's for adults who are 21 and older who would qualify to get care in a nursing home or other institution. People who are 18 to 21 with IDD may be enrolled in this group if they can't live with their family anymore. A lot of people in this group are paired with someone else who's also receiving this benefit level, and they might live together in an apartment or house so that they can get sort of share their workers or level of care. It's an effective way of delivering service and handling our worker crisis. This is the highest level of the regular care, and people typically have either higher supervision needs or a higher level of medical need in this category. Next slide. Group 7 is intensive behavioral family supports. This is for children under the age of 21 who live with their family at home. They have IDD and a severe behavioral support need that place the child and others at a serious risk of harm. So these, the supports available in this group are in addition to, what might be available in group 4. The behaviors are so challenging that the child is at risk of being placed outside the home. So they are really supports that are to help the family keep the child safely at home. And so that would be, more intensive supports, more training, a higher level of training of workers that are assisting or providers that are assisting the child, things like that. Next slide. And the final group is group 8, and that's comprehensive behavior supports for employment and community living. And this is for adults 21 and older, though sometimes someone as young as 18. And they have IDD like everyone else in ECF, but they also have severe behavior support needs. And they're moving from the community into an institutional setting. So their behavior is so great that they are not safe in at home or in a typical community setting. So they need that residential or institutional level of care. This is how enrollment is usually short term, but in behavioral terms, that could really be up to a year. And once the person is stable, they're moved back to their typical benefit group. But I have seen that be a difficult challenge, and I hope that they revisit that in the future and are willing to create some sort of step down, because individuals with these sorts of problems don't typically reach, what we would consider stable. These types of issues tend to be lifelong, ongoing, and we need to be able to support them in the same way that we do people who don't have behaviors. Next slide. So now we can discuss level of care. Next slide. So there is a really nice document. When you receive the slides from this, you can click on that. It's what's in the background here that shows exactly what's covered in each group. And it also details a little bit of what that entails. And it's really nice to look at because there are some big differences between the groups. Yet there are also some large similarities. So it's a really nice and handy chart that they have there. Next slide. One of the big things that's I think more challenging for families to kind of manage are the cost caps. There is an overall cost cap and then cost caps, sort of sub cost caps between benefits. So we'll talk about that a little. Next slide. Which services count towards my cost cap? Next slide. Oh, oops. I guess I need to just describe that. It's hard to know which ones are going to count and which ones aren't. That's another thing that is handy about the benefit table. It describes what the limits are of the different benefits. It is hard to keep track of different different levels, because some of them are only monthly budgets. And if you do not spend it all, you lose it. And then you don't have it for the next month. And that can be a little difficult for families to track. I think there are other things that make it difficult for families to use. Hold on, I'm going backwards to my notes that I just closed out of. One other thing that make cost caps difficult for families to keep track of is how often they're able to see their total and their budget, and whether it matches with what they used and what the company has on file. There's often a discrepancy just because of how the system counts time and how people count time. And that can make it very hard for people to keep track of everything. I'm sorry, I've just lost my place. 1 second. Sorry about that. My computer always decides to close things when I am trying to use it. Okay. Now I'm back where I was trying to be. Anyway, so some things have longer budgets than others. And now there is extra money from the ARPA allotment that people are trying to figure out how to use. And that has been an extra difficulty with trying to figure out your cost cap. And some folks are not sure if that means that you have to exhaust all of the benefits that you already have, or if you're allowed to access that immediately. So that's still a question that's sort of in the air. Next slide. So, how to get enrolled. That's always a fun process. It's actually super easy. Next slide. If you're not on TennCare, you go online to the TennCare Connect portal or to DIDD, and then you go through their online process. If you are already on TennCare, you click on this. There's a little online tool that you click on with your MCO and your managed care organization that takes you through the same connecting process. The referral list is not the same as a waiting list, although it functions exactly like one. And it's interesting that they call it that. but anyway, it has several different stages. So you get through the screening part, and that is basically just saying, yes, you have, your application has been sort of reviewed, and you are passed through for a full intake. And then you are reviewed by an interagency committee or placed in an ECF category. And then if you're not placed in an ECF priority category, you go into a reserve capacity. It's all very confusing based on those pink and green sheets that we looked at before. But basically, when you eventually get chosen or you're able to get into a slot, you go through an interview process. It can be rather lengthy, although I think they've done a good job since using Zoom of sort of combining some of the steps of the interview process, where they do sort of a records review and kind of a, their version of a assessment on functionality and where the person is in their sort of regular functioning. And that sort of happens again at a more extensive level as you're enrolled and they develop the plan. It's really an involved process. I think we could do a little better with how we educate people on that so that they could come a little more informed and be engaged. I think right now we really rely on the support coordinator to be that informed and be able to pull out the correct information from the family or the individual. And sometimes they're not trained or prepared to do that. So we don't end up with such a good support plan. But some of them are absolutely trained very well to do that. So it just depends. So next slide. Once they are enrolled, that enrollee and their support care coordinator develop their plan, which basically lays out all of their services. And that can be modified over time, just like an IEP might have been. And it talks about, like I said, how they're functioning, what are their needs, how they will be received, what their frequency is, sort of all the who, what's, where, when, why, of how everything that the plan is going to provide looks like. It should be a very detailed document. And they do sort of review that already on a fairly regular basis just by meeting with the support coordinator, but things aren't always necessarily changed that often. Next slide. One of the options offered in ECF is called consumer direction. And it's important to remember that this means that you're accepting the responsibility of being the employer of the person that is providing this support. So that means all of the duties of the employer. So interviewing, hiring, firing, you are the HR person. You're going to need to recruit people and retain them. For some people, this is sort of natural, and some people have wide networks and it doesn't entail much work. But for others, this is really a full-time job and can be sort of a revolving door. it really just depends. This in ECF, you are limited to consumer direction to four different benefits, and that's personal assistance, supportive home care, hourly respite, and community transportation. For many people, consumer direction is the answer to the problem of getting services. A lot of agencies or can't find workers to service certain areas, or there just aren't available services like transportation in certain areas. So consumer direction really is the only option, and that's a great answer for a lot of people. But for others, it's just, like I said, it's a lot of work. Next slide. Appeals. So there are good appeals protections in ECF. An individual has a right to a hearing only when the individual is considered an applicant. That means they have reached the enrollment process and their application or referral has been denied. When they have involuntarily been withdrawn from ECF Choices, when services are denied or reduced, even though they fall within the cost cap for the enrollee, when adverse action is taken against the applicant, when the denial of enrollment or involuntary disenrollment due to an enrollee's cost cap being exceeded. So what do you do if you qualify for a fair hearing? You have the opportunity to present any relevant evidence at these hearings when an adverse action is taken, which can include challenging whether the expenditure cap was calculated appropriately. Sometimes people do hire someone to represent them, but I often see parents represent themselves at these type of hearings and be successful. So I encourage people to always exercise their rights in any way they can. Next slide. Involuntary withdrawal. So when does this happen? When a member no longer meets the eligibility criteria, and that can be all of the features of the eligibility criteria. When a member no longer when a member's needs can no longer be safely met in the community. Remember, we talked about a few scenarios in which a person would need to be institutionalized or would need their needs to be met outside of the community. That could be a reason that they need a different kind of service. Another reason is that they no longer need or no longer receiving long-term services or supports, or that the managed care organization or participating providers are no longer willing to serve the member, or they're no longer willing to serve the member in ECF. I'm not sure that that has actually happened, but definitely could be a technical possibility. Next slide. Involuntary withdrawal. So that could occur when a member elects to receive institutional services. So maybe they decide to move to an ICF or intermediate care facility. Maybe they move to a nursing facility beyond a short-term stay. ECF services are meant for those who aren't already receiving other services. So upon receipt of a signed statement from the member or their authorized representative voluntarily requesting disenrollment is when voluntary withdrawal occurs. This is tricky. When intake coordinators do not understand the non-employment aspects, people are frequently given incorrect information about the program, when they would be eligible, and the program could in fact provide them services. So a lot of times, I think this has been true since the program launched and still exists today. People think that they have to be employed or want employment to be in this program. And other features that just aren't true. It's important to know that there is no right to a fair hearing if a member voluntarily withdraws. Next slide. TennCare, Medicaid, and ECF choices. How do they work together? So this is another thing that I think is often underutilized. ECF choices members have full Medicaid coverage. And so that means that they get their ECF benefits on top of regular state plan Medicaid. And they often can work in tandem. So for instance, with behavioral services in particular, I think has really grown in knowledge recently about how we look at layering those services. And if it's not available through the HCBS component, providers, can we find it through the medical side providers, or can they work together to maximize the person's frequency and duration? They have that ability to use both, and they don't conflict each other. So I think people are using that also really well to manage their sort of, what am I thinking of? My brain. Long-term sort of medical issues. I've heard some good stories about how people are layering that with some ongoing nursing that they get through their HCBS, and that's working really well to, like for instance, with diabetic patients, to increase their positive outcomes through using both services together. So that's a little known, I think, thing that is starting to grow, and I really hope that that continues, because they do have both services and they can be used together in any way. And that would be excellent for more and more folks. Next slide. I think that might be the last one.
Yeah. So Sarah, I think we were missing some notes on some earlier slides. Would you be okay? Yeah, of course. Okay, I'll pop back to where I think we kind of lost some of those notes.
It was. Gotcha. Yeah. All right. So here we were talking about how many individuals were on DIDD waiting lists but not receiving services. The day that it launched, individuals and families were trying to log in at midnight to complete a self-referral form because they had waited already years for services, but couldn't get through. Like I said, previous to this program launching, adults with DD, such as autism, did not have adult services to turn to. They were just out of luck once they became adults. So Tennessee wanted to provide more services cost effectively, and services through waiver programs were very expensive. So they wanted to look at more home and community-based services, HCBS services. They want to provide services that individuals with IDD and their families said that they needed the most to minimize sheltered workshops and the isolation of those individuals, because sheltered workshops are basically segregated employment, and there's a growing understanding that especially as we've come along in time, that people belong in the community, and that provides better outcomes in their health, especially I think in mental health, but also in their physical health. Next slide. And so people would get on to the program through a referral process, and the MCO would coordinate the care and would designate a service coordinator. And the service coordinator would connect you to vendors who provide the services. And the service coordinator also serves as a middleman who helps you obtain the services. They send out referrals sort of electronically, and try to sort of manage those as they come in and out, and what responses they get. They can really make or break as far as receiving care and treatment that's needed. The target populations are children under age 21 and adults 21 and over with intellectual and developmental disabilities who meet select level of care and financial criteria. Here's some interesting numbers. As of the end of September of this year, Group 4 had just shy of 900 people. Group 5, 1,591. Group 6, 1,166. Group 7 had 30 people, and Group 8 had 40 people, for a total of 3,721. That's pretty, it's also a small number, but it's pretty remarkable for just a 5-year-old program. Next slide. Okay, so for, I didn't go into this in much detail. So for the 3 potential eligibility categories, SSI eligible is pretty straightforward. If you're eligible, you receive TennCare Medicaid. If you are a 217-like group, then you receive TennCare Standard. And the same for the at-risk group. For the 217 group and the at-risk group, your income is less than 300% of the SSI. And in 2021, this was $23.82 per month. So the parent's income would count unless the child would qualify to receive care in a nursing home. You can't have given away or sold anything for less than what it's worth in the last 5 years. And if you were in the 217 like group, you must also meet the nursing facility level of care criteria. And for the at-risk, you would be eligible in the same manner if the HCBS were provided under a 1915C waiver. I don't know if that makes much sense to anybody. If you don't do a lot of waiver talk, but I think that the important things to know about those slides are that there are different financial criteria in both income and assets, and there are different level of care criteria for all of the paths. Next slide.
I think we went into pretty good detail for the next couple of slides, but do you want to talk a little bit more about the level of care criteria?
Yes.
It does get kind of into the weeds, kind of as we were talking about the financial part, but maybe you have a few thoughts about that.
I think so. Basically, what they look at, they do a PAE, a pre-admission evaluation, to look at your levels of functioning and what level of care is needed for you to be safe, basically. What level of support do you need to be independent? What medical interventions are you receiving? Do you need assistance with your activities of daily living? Are you taking medications? Do you read? Do you need help with ambulation? Are you an independent toileter? It really varies from every activity. It's a rather in-depth assessment to go through all sorts of from sort of not, and I wouldn't call it educational per se, but there is definitely a functional component, a lot of communication information, and a lot of medical information, particularly if the individual requires, any kind of ongoing nursing or skilled care. And that's really how the group is determined beyond that initial age piece. That really is the first piece. But then the second piece is, what level of care do you need? What interventions are you currently receiving? Do you need personal assistance? Do you need eyes on you all the time for safety? Are you able to be, independent in any skills or activities? Are they going to be pursuing employment? Do they need a job coach for that? Will they be starting at the beginning with the discovery and figuring out, what employment is, or is this person already have a job and they're just needing, sort of minor supports to keep them in safe? Because this waiver accepts people, from 0 to 100, and of really a wide range of needs and abilities. There's really a wide range of what could be covered and how it looks for people. And I think that's easy to forget. And also one of the things that's so difficult about encompassing, these things. So I really think that we can't understate the job of the support coordinator enough. Those people should be praised more. And that level of care piece is really what is going to drive the support plan and allow people access to their appropriate benefits.
I'm going to pop in a little bit and talk more about some of the things that we at our organization, Tennessee Justice Center, sees, and maybe how we can assist you if you're on the program, you're experiencing issues, or you're interacting and you're kind of like, I'm a little confused about what's going on here. So our organization, Tennessee Justice Center, works pretty closely with Sarah. She's part of Family Voices of Tennessee and Tennessee Disability Coalition in terms of identifying issues. They definitely provide a lot of hands-on support with families who are going through the process and in the program. And we kind of come in when things are problems. So we're not like the best people that you have to interact with because it's usually something wrong is going on. But we're a nonprofit law firm and advocacy organization. And some of the things that we've seen with this program, so one thing, as Sarah was mentioning, in ECF Choices Group 4 and Group 7, those two groups are indeed available to children. But a lot of the time, folks are calling their MCO or DID, and they're saying, hey, I think my kid who's under 18 should be looking into this program as an option. And they say, oh, your kid is under 14, they're not eligible. What we think they're trying to say is they're probably not going to be getting a slot because there are those narrow numbers of slots and they do have those priority categories, but that does not mean they are not eligible for the program. And so that's wrong information. And we really want to make sure that even if they're saying that, which they shouldn't be, the child still is assessed for the program. And if they are eligible, which as Sarah mentioned, they need to have an intellectual or developmental disability, they're put on the waiting list. So if a slot does open up at some point, they potentially could get services at that point. Another thing that we have seen is folks who get a TennCare termination. So so as Sarah's mentioned, there's this relationship between TennCare Medicaid and ECF Choices. And with ECF Choices, you should get TennCare, but there are sometimes issues where someone maybe has TennCare through SSI or something like that. And then their financial circumstances change. Maybe they're working a lot. And so they lose their SSI eligibility. They lose their SSI. If they're on the ECF Choices program, our argument is that they should still be considered through to keep their TennCare Medicaid through that 217-like group and that interim at-risk group that Sarah was talking about. The other thing is there's a very unique thing that I've learned a lot with folks who are on ECF Choices who were in that like SSI eligibility. So that's how they had their TennCare. But then their circumstances change and they get what we call like SSI-like categories. And that really can be when, for example, a child starts receiving Social Security benefits from their parents' work history, and then they get that DAC benefit or a disabled adult child. They're still eligible for TennCare, but TennCare, for whatever reason, has a lot of trouble capturing the eligibility for this category. So remember these two kind of relationships with TennCare and ECF Choices. And if you're kind of experiencing an issue with one, that can impact the other part. So if something like that comes up, we really want to hear about it. We want to see if we can help. So you can contact our organization. And then the last thing I kind of want to mention, which is not really a negative thing, is the MCOs that administer the ECF Choices program that the person might be assigned to. And the various regions have meetings, which Sarah's actually very active in, and I've attended a couple too. And these should be, there are some that are available to enrollees and their families. And that is a really good point where you can interact with the MCO in kind of a high level programmatic setting, because you can talk about some of the issues that you're seeing across the board. Maybe your friend who's an enrollee is also experiencing this issue, and you can bring those issues up there, and you can interact, of course, with other enrollees there. And at that point, you can kind of issue spot some of the things that might need improvement, and the MCO should be receptive and kind of try to collaborate with folks to kind of resolve some of the issues you're seeing. Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit more about those meetings?
Sure. I noticed that someone asked in the chat, what do families do when their support coordinator is not clearly trained or informed adequately? And that is my answer. So there's these meetings happen quarterly. They are well attended by MCO staff and by providers, not so much by families and individuals. So we really want to change that, because they really need to hear what the actual issues are from the people that are having them in order to make actual change. And each MCO has one in each region. So there are 9 each quarter. I'm sorry, that's not correct. I'm having a day. They are intended to really collect the information that lived experience and what are people who are really using this program experiencing. Some of the groups run a little differently than the others. They're really neat, in my opinion, because they're required to be 51% family. They're still working on that, as I said. But so back to the question about what do families do when their support coordinator isn't so good. We suggest that they first go to the member advocate, who is the person who runs the advocacy groups. But after that, it's an important thing to talk about at advocacy group is the training of support coordinators. They're a vital piece of how the program is working and how people are able to access their benefits. And if their training is faulty, then the program is going to be faulty.
Thank you so much. So that's the only question that I did see. Does anyone else have any questions? We've gotten to our question and answer portion of the presentation. Okay, well, I'll try to speak slowly if another question comes in. But it looks like we can give you all 4 more minutes of your time. Thank you so much for joining us. And we definitely, I saw a few folks wanted to get copies of the slides, and we can send a link to the recording as well, so you can go over it. And oh, I'm seeing another thing. Okay, and so these are our emails. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. And hopefully we can assist at that time. Oh, I see a Q&A. Do you know when the new block will open? So I think you're speaking about the potential new slots that are going to be that TennCare is hoping to give American Rescue Plan or ARPA funds to fund. Sarah, do you have any latest updates about that?
So I know that they're anticipating enrolling 50 people a month, but per MCO. But I don't know that they have decided when they are going to start that.
Yeah, and a lot of those things can be kind of a wait and see because they want to keep things close to their chest until they're ready to do anything. And then that's usually a quick turnaround for us to respond to. All right, so let me check again if there are any other questions. How will that selection be made?
So the waiting list is prioritized, again, by that pink and green sheet. So they'll go by that first.
Okay, so I think those are all of the questions. Again, please feel free to reach out to us. Here are our emails. And thank you so much, Sarah, for your help here. It's always wonderful to hear more about your experience and your knowledge about this program. All right, well, I hope, of course, yeah, thank you. Okay, well, I hope everyone has a good rest of their day. Bye-bye.